The air in Loudun, France, in 1632 was thick with whispers, words that clung to the stone walls of its convent and spread like wildfire through the cobbled streets. Inside the Ursuline convent, nuns twisted and writhed, their voices rising in a cacophony of screams, chants, and accusations. What began as peculiar fits soon unraveled into something far more sinister, claims of demonic possession. But was this truly the devil's work, or was the stage set by the human mind, fragile under the weight of repression, fear, and forbidden desire? The events at Loudun compel us to ask how much of our reality is shaped by belief, and how far can shared hysteria bend the boundaries of reason? To understand, we must untangle the threads of history, psychology, and human emotion that wove this tragedy into existence. The convent of Loudun housed nuns who had dedicated their lives to spiritual devotion, yet behind its austere facade lay the complexities of human yearning. The Ursulines, drawn from noble families, had often been consigned to religious life not by choice, but by familial design. Their cloistered existence, filled with monotonous rituals and suppressed individuality, became a fertile ground for inner turmoil. How many of them longed for the world beyond the convent's gates, their desires smothered under the guise of piety? Into this charged atmosphere stepped Father Urban Grandier, a charismatic and controversial figure. Handsome, eloquent, and ambitious, Grandier had enemies aplenty within the church and the local community. He was accused of moral lapses, including illicit relationships with women, and his defiance of authority further fueled resentment. It was in this climate of animosity that the nuns began accusing him of witchcraft, claiming he had sent demons to torment them. The accusations spiraled into grotesque performances. The nuns convulsed, shrieked, and hurled blasphemies, their bodies contorting as if under an invisible force. Witnesses claimed to see unnatural feats, levitation, the ability to speak languages they had never learned, and knowledge of secrets they could not have known. The spectacle drew crowds, turning the convent into a theater of the macabre. But were these manifestations of genuine possession, or were they born from psychological fractures exacerbated by their isolation? The phenomenon of possession, in many cases, can be understood through the lens of psychology. In Loudun, the nuns' behavior may have been a form of dissociation, a psychological escape from the rigidity of their lives. Repression of natural emotions, combined with the pressure to conform to an idealized image of purity, could have created a breaking point. In claiming possession, the nuns found a socially acceptable outlet for their anguish, a way to express desires and fears that otherwise would have remained locked away. How often, one wonders, does the mind seek extraordinary explanations to cope with the unbearable? The role of suggestion and collective hysteria cannot be understated. The concept of demonic possession was deeply ingrained in the 17th century psyche, reinforced by religious teachings and societal norms. The idea that women, perceived as morally weaker and more susceptible to the devil's influence, could be overtaken by malevolent forces was widely accepted. When one nun displayed symptoms of possession, it may have triggered a domino effect, with others unconsciously mimicking the behavior. How much of our own behavior, even today, is influenced by those around us? Can the power of belief, shared and amplified, override individual rationality? Father Grandier, the accused sorcerer, became a scapegoat for the town's fears and grievances. His trial was a spectacle in itself, marked by forced confessions, fabricated evidence, and brutal interrogations. Despite his vehement denials, he was convicted and sentenced to death. As the flames consumed him at the stake, was he a martyr to a darker truth about human nature, the tendency to vilify those who challenged the status quo? The Loudun Possessions reveal a society grappling with profound anxieties. The 17th century was a time of upheaval, with religious conflicts, political strife, and the lingering spectre of the plague casting long shadows. In such uncertain times, the concept of an external enemy, whether witches, demons, or heretics, provided a sense of order and control. The nuns' accusations, therefore, were not just personal, but societal, a reflection of collective fears projected onto an individual. In moments of crisis, do we too seek scapegoats to make sense of chaos? The aftermath of the Loudun Possessions was as revealing as the events themselves. The Church, far from condemning the spectacle, used it to assert its authority. Exorcisms were performed publicly, drawing even larger crowds. The nuns, now celebrity figures, became tools in a broader power struggle between the Church and secular authorities. Their alleged torment served as a grim reminder of the Church's dominion over the forces of darkness and over the people themselves. But what of the nuns, those women whose cries echoed through the convent's halls? Were they victims of their own minds, or of a society that denied them agency and identity? The answers lie in the shadowy intersections of psychology and culture, where individual and collective consciousness collide. Their plight forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the human condition, the ways in which repression breeds rebellion, belief shapes perception, and fear can consume reason. As we look back on the events of Loudun, we must ask ourselves, how far have we come in understanding the forces that drive us to the edge of reason? In a world still rife with misinformation and mass hysteria, the story of the nuns of Loudun serves as both a cautionary tale and a mirror to our own vulnerabilities. Would we recognize such a descent into delusion if it happened again? Or would we, like the onlookers in 1632, be swept up in the spectacle? The answers, perhaps, lie not in the heavens or in the depths of hell, but within the fragile labyrinth of the human mind.